7th, 7 p.m. This is the Town of Mount Airy monthly Planning Commission meeting, and we're honored tonight to be hosting Troop 460 Boy Scouts, and I'm going to ask that one of their representatives come forward, and we'll begin this evening with the Pledge of Allegiance led by myself and this young scout. If I could ask you to stand, please. We're going to face this way. Let's begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well done. Good job. And again, thank you for joining us this evening. Before we begin, the Planning Commission would like to recognize our outgoing mayor. And if I could ask for Mayor Larry Hushauer to come forward. We have a couple of gifts for you, sir. Some parting gifts. As I explained to the scouts tonight, the mayor is our chief executive for running the town, and he appoints the volunteers that are on the variety of commissions and boards. And when he makes that appointment to the elected council, it's the beginning of his signal to each of these volunteers that he has trust and confidence in us conducting the business of that commission or board wisely, appropriately, and according to the code book. And Larry always did one step more, and that is whenever we needed advice on doing that job, Larry was always there to provide that advice and support us in our role to serve the town. So we sincerely thank you for that trust and support, Larry. We really do. We know that you're headed toward grandpa duties along with Mary, and so we know that those days can be challenging. Yeah. And so to end those days appropriately, the commission would like to give you and Mary a restaurant card to one of your favorite restaurants, the Mount Airy Inn. There you go. And I can't think of a better way to end the day with a young toddler than going out to eat. So that's important. We have a second gift here, and I've mentioned being a grandpa. I have full confidence that Larry's going to rock it, okay? I said to Larry the other day, I said, your number one concern is changing diapers. And the reason I say I know he's prepared because he says, Ralph, I'm going to check you on that. He goes, my main concern with regard to changing diapers is number 2. But spoken as a grandpa. But you all know that grandpas are really just antique little boys. That's really what we are. And so you have a wonderful, beautiful little grandson. And so we thought, maybe he needs a guide on how to babysit grandpa. I love it. And so for you and Alec, your first storybook, perhaps. I know you are going to have several. But again, we thank you for all your support. I don't know if you'd like to make any remarks or.
Well, listen, it's absolutely an honor to be up here, and I appreciate everything you guys have done. But you have to realize you're the ones who kept my head above the water. It wasn't the other way around. And so I greatly appreciate everything that you guys have done for me in the support over the last 5 years as mayor and on the council before that. So thank you very much. This is extremely wonderful. If the word bow legs is not in here, I don't know how I'm going to read it. I got to have some Ralphisms in here, but that's wonderful. All right, thanks a lot.
Can we get a picture quick?
Yeah. Commission want to come up?
Yeah, if I could just ask the commissioners come around the dais. business is the approval of the minutes from last meeting. And so I ask the commissioners if you'll take a look. Get back to the mic here. If you'll please take a look at the minutes that have been drafted from Miss Deborah Clinton, and I'll be looking for a motion for either approval or disapproval of the past month's meeting minutes. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
The motion's been made by Commissioner Butts for approval. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Hadley seconds the motion. Is there any discussion on edits or amendments to the current minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes of the last meeting, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
Abstain.
Those who wish to abstain by reason of absence. So we have one abstention. The motion is approved for the meeting minutes. We've arrived at the part of our agenda tonight for citizen comments. I often preface the first person to come to the mic with some guidance. I do ask that you, when you arrive at the mic, I believe I turned it on. When you arrive at the mic, if I could ask you to state your name and whether you are or are not a resident of the town. I will ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes. I will run a clock here to help you guide your comments. And right now, could I ask for a show of hands of those interested in speaking? I see 2. That is not a limit. If there's a third or fourth, I'll certainly welcome that. And so with that set of rules, I'll ask the first person, Ms. Hemphill or Mr. Cordry, if you'd like to approach the microphone.
Hi, everybody. It's good to be back. First, I want to thank the Planning Commission for everything that you do. It's a very tasking job, as I well know. The reason I'm here, I do live on 605 Park Avenue. I am a resident of the town. I'm here as the president of the Maryland Planning Commissioners Association to announce that we are having a conference again in October, along with the APA, that's the American Planning Association of Maryland. We're not fully vested in the fact that we're partnering with them. We have agreed to do a track, as it's called, of sessions for citizen planners. It will be held October the 18th through the 20th. 20th, I'm sorry. And the theme is planning and the speed of change. There's a lot of different things that you can imagine we'll be talking about. We are asking for proposals. You can, if you feel to submit a proposal, you can. It is on the website. You'll see where you submit it. I'm not going to go into that. Some of the things that we've already decided as the Planning Commission for the state is we are going to have, it's going to be at least a 60 to 70 minute presentation session led by myself and Sharon Suarez, who is a retired planner from the city of Frederick. She's very active nationally in the APA as well as locally. She and I are going to kind of bust open our little nuts and bolts that we do at most of our presentations, and we're going in deep. We're going to talk about Robert's Rules of Order. We're going to talk about how you plan a meeting. We're going to talk about how you read a site plan. We're going to go over the ethics for a planner. We're also going to go over the fair housing rules and regulations that a planner has to be aware of when they're on this commission or any commission, as well as any questions. We're also going to, at the end of each day, have a 30-minute question and answer period where all of the community planners, citizen planners can come and get together and ask any questions that they have. And it's a way for you all to network with the other planners because you don't see them a lot, and you don't have a lot of communication with them. And I think that sometimes is a bad thing. So we're going to try to arrange that on Monday evening before dinner and Tuesday right after the sessions end. I'm looking forward to it. Am I done? You cut me off. I'll leave. I just want to know that you know that the MPCA, their concentration is education, and it's education for the community planner. So if you have any ideas, any concerns or questions, you can reach me anytime. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you, Roxanne. And John, so I don't forget, let's make sure we get a roll call or at least a tentative attendance at the October conference.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask, basically piggyback on her. So let me know if you're interested in going, so we can make sure we either get you registered, and if you need a hotel for whatever reason, we can get you a hotel potentially as well.
Where's the location?
That's Turf Valley.
Turf Valley. Okay.
Turf Valley again. Okay, super. Thank you again, Ms. Hemphill. There was a gentleman, Mr. Cordry.
Good evening. My name is Dwayne Cordry. My residence is in Kings Forest Trail. I'm a resident of the town of Mount Airy. I'm here to comment on the Warfield annexation. I know the town council is going to be meeting next week to decide whether to annex that property into the town limits. But first of all, I'd just like to thank the Planning Commission for listening to the citizens and voting unanimously 6-0 to oppose the annexation. There are town council members here tonight that I hope will not undermine the efforts that this Planning Commission performed in doing their due diligence to come to that decision. I know it was a decision, as Ralph has mentioned before, that was scrubbed with a wire brush to make sure everything was done morally, ethically, and legally. I found it somewhat appalling, disgusting, and disgraceful the way the petitioners addressed the town council and some of the comments they made in reference to things that happened and were said in the Planning Commission and what was put in the report. I thought their snarky comments were just unprofessional and certainly undeserved and unwelcome. Earlier this afternoon, I sent a video to the town council members. Please check your email. Ralph, you were copied. Mr. Hushauer, you received a copy of my video that I took at Patriots Park North on the afternoon of July 17th, about 2:15 in the afternoon. I umpired there that Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, and the following week, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. There are 6 baseball fields there. The parking spots, 467 parking lots. Completely full. Completely full. The video will show cars trying to get in, trying to get out, and it's backlogged. The feeder road into Willow Springs Road, where this facility is a double-lane boulevard with a traffic light and turn lanes. It was backed up. When I umpired Saturday morning, I had an 8 a.m. game, and I tried to get there early to get a parking spot. I was there at 6:30. That lot was already 2/3 the way filled. I had to leave after my second game to go do a college game up in Baltimore, and as I was leaving, cars were lined up, blinkers on, trying to get to my parking spot. And when I left, I could hear them yelling, I was here first. I'm like, I'm out of here. My concern is this is what's going to happen, not only in this facility that's proposed to be annexed on Watersville Road, it's going to happen here in town. One of the citizens actually counted the spots at Walmart and Safeway, and it's about equivalent to what Patriots Park is and what the petitioners are suggesting they have. Again, the baseball fields at Patriot Park North, 6. They're all being used. This field, this complex, they're looking at about a similar amount, in addition to soccer fields, pickleball courts, basketball courts. So for the town council members here, please take a look at that video. I will have more to share at the town council meeting. I'm not going to disclose my hand here because I'm sure the petitioners are watching here tonight and are going to try to develop a counter to what I have to say at that town council meeting, and I'm not going to give them that privilege. They showed how unprofessional they are. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cordry. Is there any other interest in public comments this evening? Once again, any further public comments? Hearing none, I am closing this part of the agenda for public comments and now moving to our county liaison planners. We'll begin with Ms. Tiffany Fawcett representing Carroll County. Tiffany, welcome. And for the scouts here and for the public, the town staff organizes these liaisons because we straddle both counties, and it's important through the town staff effort that the commissioners and the staff stay attuned to the high-level important muscle movements going on at both of those counties, and most particularly how they may or may not affect the running of this town. And so that's kind of the charter of this good partnership with these representatives who take time out of their regular business day to come down here in the evening and have this conversation to keep us aware, keep us apprised of the county business. And so, Tiffany, I hope that wasn't too long a lead-in, but welcome.
Thank you. No, I appreciate that. It's great to see them here and see the interest. That's fabulous. Good evening, everyone. We'll start with that there were no new development plans in the near area. What we're seeing, we are seeing a lot of plans at the county level right now. We had our technical review committee this morning, and we had 5. Normally there's 2 to 3 plans that come through, and 4 out of the 5 were solar in the mostly Finksburg and northeast side of the county right now, but they're coming in very fast for the solar since that's been opened up at the state level. And so water and sewer, the water sewer master plan fall amendments will be reaching out to the town pretty soon to see if there are any amendments for that. And then for the triennial update, we'll start that after that. So be reaching out to try to reset the water sewer master plan in the coming months. The annual report was submitted June 29th on behalf of the city, as well as the county and the other 7 municipalities. The water resource element and forest conservation changes did go to public hearing before the county commissioners this month. Should be voting on that. I haven't seen it's not this week, I don't think, but I haven't seen the agenda for next week yet on that. But it did go to public hearing for public comment. We do obviously have the deferrals right now in place for retirement villages and retirement homes, planned commercial centers, which include a residential element, as well as the cluster subdivisions. And so there is a law that was passed at the state level this year that as of October 1st, any plan that has a complete application submitted is vested. And so and that's for residential development. And then after that, once it's complete plan, no changes to the zoning would affect them. They'd be subject to the zoning that is in effect at the time that we have received a complete application. So with those deferrals that are in place, 3 of them do affect residential development. So we have text amendments coming through to the county commissioners this week on the retirement villages and retirement homes, as well as the cluster subdivisions, trying to get those before the October 1st deadline. ADUs are also coming to them with the text change recommended text changes from the Planning Commission this Thursday. So all of those will be before them this Thursday for discussion. That might be everything that I have. That's everything. Yeah, any questions?
Fantastic. Any questions to Ms. Fawcett? Commissioner Wallace?
Yeah, I just had a couple of questions. One was on the forest conservation. I was listening to it, but I wasn't watching it. But did I hear correctly that they're actually changing the requirements where it used to be like 1-to-1 replacement, and now it's like 1 to a half acre?
I could not tell you exactly what it is, but yes, there is a change.
So they're reducing the amount of reforestation?
I don't believe it was reducing.
Okay.
I thought it was an increase, but I can get the details on that and get them.
Yeah, that's fine. I can reach also out to Jonathan Bowman. I would doubt that they're reducing that, but it's possible,
yeah.
I guess.
I can just watch the video again, too.
But also on that, I will say that they have said several times that developers are kind of anxious to get those in place because they are beneficial. So I'm not sure. That's
right,
But
yeah.
State of Maryland's usually pretty, as Jonathan said, really conservative on that. So one or the other.
And then the other was on the cluster subdivisions. So as I understand it, that's where if you have a large section of land, you can still build the same number of homes that would have been allowed like on an R40, I guess, but you can like cram them all together. Is that how that works?
That is. That's
Okay.
cluster subdivision.
Yeah.
And so the recommended changes, I'm not sure of the details on the recommended changes, and I can get those for you, but it's been considered to not allow that based on a gross acreage of the parcel, but to use a net acreage of the parcel. But then there's also to return to what we had a few years ago, where it was we required developers to come through with a conventional site plan, which showed on paper how many lots you could get, and then you could cluster. And then a few years ago, that changed to you didn't need the conventional site plan because math pretty much worked out that it was the same no matter what. So you could just go ahead and use the gross density and then provide just the cluster subdivision site plan.
Okay.
And so looking at that.
And so when do you expect they'll vote on that?
They're bringing it Thursday before the county commissioners, the recommendations
Okay, great.
for discussion.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Gotcha. Any other questions from Ms. Fawcett? Trailing on the point made by Commissioner Wallace, as a part of that forestation question, maybe it wouldn't hurt, John, I'm not trying to give you more work, but it probably wouldn't hurt for the commissioners to get refreshed on the whole forestation bank. If you know what I'm talking about, where developers now can tap into that bank when their requirement for forestation can't be met on the plat development. And so that forestation ratio, I think, also plays into the forestation bank that we have within the state and the county.
Well, I think that's part of the problem is that the bank, the Carroll County's bank is dwindling to a point that they don't have any more bank available. So, and so which means is happening is now the cost to bank or purchase into a bank has skyrocketed. It used to be $5,000 an acre, and now it's like $18,000 an acre and going up, especially when there's only so much land that you can only put so many trees on.
Yeah.
So, you know, again,
Only so much forested land.
well, just this can be land that's being reforested, right? So,
Correct. Yeah.
but yeah, so it'll be interesting to see
Yeah.
what the end
It'd be
result is.
it'd be a healthy kind of broad discussion. So, I had one more question, and that had to do with you mentioned the solar applications are coming in. Am I incorrect in that there was at one time a moratorium placed by the county commissioners, Carroll County commissioners, with regard to accepting any further applications for solar farms? And is that expired?
Well, there was a moratorium in place, and then it was just removed from the code. So there was no longer a moratorium, they just were not allowed in or conservation. And then at a state level, that was overridden.
I gotcha.
So now, then we adopted the code for the state's requirements, and so that it is in our zoning code, so there are zoning setbacks requirements and landscaping requirements, so that those are now applicable. So there was just no way around it. The state says it will be done, and so the county adopted that.
And there's different levels then as well too. I think it has to be below a certain acreage and it can't exceed a certain kilowatt, I think. But there's, you know, I can possibly get some additional information if you guys want to see it.
No, I think I'm satisfied with the question. Is that we can no longer go against the state who says solar farms can go forward.
And they do have regulations. There are ones that do need to go for CPCN, the community and public. I don't know. I can't remember what it is. But it's for the benefit. So at a state level, it has to be seen at a certain wattage or certain acreage megawatts that it's for the community's benefit. And at that level, they get a certification that says it is for the community benefit, and then you can move forward. And that's for over 2 megawatts, I do believe. But under 2 megawatts, they don't need to go to the state for that, and they can just come and just before the planning commission for that. And but either way, it's allowed in ag and conservation now.
Fantastic.
No more moratorium.
Last call for questions. Thank you again, Tiffany.
Pleasure.
For the Frederick County liaison, I believe, John, if I'm not mistaken, we still are filling that role. Do you have anything to share at all from Frederick County?
No, I did not receive anything from their Frederick County Planning Department.
Okay, gotcha. I'm going to move on now to the major items on our agenda, and I'd like to preface by saying the following 3 items on our agenda are not the typical kind of agenda items you'll find on a planning commission meeting, but nonetheless, they are, I feel, important discussions for us to have on these three topics. And for us to have these discussions amongst the 7 commissioners, we have to do that in an open meeting. And so I'm taking a bit of advantage of this evening to kind of cover these 3 topics and get kind of a good discussion and get the input from all of us here as to what we want to do. And so with that kind of context, the first item that I want to introduce for our discussion, and I'm not necessarily looking for a motion or vote on this. I'm looking for just what do we think is worthy of our energy on a particular topic. And so this first topic is, we have had examples as a commission where applying the code has been, in some cases, a bit of a challenge, and that in particular, we often find ourselves with signage applications where the technical design of the sign says it is an X design, but the code language has prohibited signs that include that X design. And when we examine that design that's being put before us from a restaurant, from a business, those sorts of things, we know that there's precedence in the town. In other words, they do exist. And so we try to make sure that we adhere to this, but we're also aware that they have precedence within the town. And so we try to make our best decision. So to go back up to the higher level, does the commissioners see the need for us to provide some kind of communication in some manner to the legislative body to suggest, propose, or recommend improvements to the code, not necessarily within signs, but just in general, because this is what we have to apply. And again, I'm only using signs as just kind of the case study that we often arrive at when we struggle with that particular application. And so that's kind of my first question here. Do we feel like there could be legislative improvements? Because we all know the council has the legislative authority. The council, the elected members, those 5, they hold, as I often say, they hold the pen to rewrite and change the code that we have to comply with. Does anybody here want to say yes or no as to that challenge, or is it a worthy enough challenge for us to be bothered by it? Commissioner Wallace?
I think it's worthy. I wouldn't say we're bothered, but I do think it's worthy. I think we saw the challenge with the liquidity sign application last month and the definition of the sign maybe not being up to date for today's technology. And I think there's a lot of other offerings out there today that might not be covered in code. So I don't know how we keep the code up to date with the speed of technology, but it's something to think about.
Gotcha. So I appreciate that. Any other comment as to, do we have a role? I did examine, before I turn to the next commissioner, I did examine Chapter 25 within the town code as to our roles and responsibilities. And I have to be upfront and frank, there is no script in that role of the Planning Commission that says, and shall make recommendations for code improvement. So I'm just being upfront, it's not embedded as pure text that we have that job called out, but in kind of partnership with the council, again, the legislative body, maybe there's goodness in us saying, hey, we apply this book often, and we could see where maybe it could be better. Commissioner Beta, any comment?
I agree completely.
Okay.
With Commissioner Wallace, and that we should go through this.
Okay.
It's outdated and it's needed.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Commissioner Hadley?
I was just going to say, sometimes we see things that the council may not. Like there's a need for signs, it comes to us, and then we're kind of confined by a code that may not be up to date. And we,
Gotcha.
To work with the council to help with that.
Gotcha. And for the public, please don't take any sense of this discussion as us declaring the code book as being broken or, inadequate. All we're talking here is in the context of areas where improvements would be easy to make, and it'd be easier for commissioners and perhaps other boards to apply the code in their roles in those duties. So if there's no pushback on there is a good sense to us partnering with them, then I move to the second question, and that is, if this does seem a reasonable bit of energy from the Planning Commission to make recommendations for code improvement, is there any input as to that process? And in that question, Councilmember Kelly, as our liaison, and because, again, I've said it several times, with great respect to the council's role to make such amendments, propose such ordinance changes, I throw out a couple of ideas. We could pull together just kind of high-level 112-11 signage needs to be relooked, general, or we could be specific. But whatever that is, as far as where we could see some improvements made, would you have some guidance as to let them all channel through you and then you take them to the larger body? Or should we steer them through the town staff, let this town staff work with, say, the town clerk, and then propose those in front of the council through the town clerk's agenda setting? So there's a couple of avenues here. And again, I'm trying to be respectful of the elected officials. I'm not trying to make an onerous process, but how do we get those good ideas to the council?
First of all, I think the council would generally agree with, especially this section. Yeah, let's look at it.
Gotcha.
And if we could use your wire brush to do that,
Okay.
More heads are better than few. So as far as the process, I think we should discuss that. We could certainly go through the staff.
Sure.
I would propose something that, I've said this in public before, but it's a little bit creative, a little bit different. I see a natural synergy here between the Planning Commission and, say, the EDC. So I would welcome input from both of those commissions. And maybe, as unorthodox as it might sound, maybe it's a joint session or a joint workshop or something to that effect.
I gotcha. You're hitting upon something. I think it's going to come up in our next topic, as far as maybe the goodness of an idea where annually we bring the commissions and boards all together so that we can find these, wise liaisons to work a specific topic, effort, whatever. And so we'll probably bring that idea up as that you've triggered here. Yeah. So what I would offer to get past this first topic is, if we commissioners want to start with 112-11, because I've repeated that, and Commissioner Wallace has mentioned it also as a challenge. What I would offer, John and Councilmember Kelly, is let us put together some words as to those areas. I don't know if we'll go to the level of change A to read B, if you know what I'm saying, but we'll say maybe the beginning of this is some of the prohibited items are actually allowed within the town, so we need to get those prohibited items scrubbed, as an example. It was mentioned as to our challenges in addressing the liquidity sign last month. That would be an area where it bounces against design guidelines, downtown zone, those sorts of things. So very kind of general as a starting point.
Themes, maybe.
Themes. Themes is a good way to say that. And John, if you're not against it, I will draft that, commissioners, and I will have it on the agenda our next meeting at that high level, and then we can hand those off to John after you guys edit them or add to them, and then we can hand them off to John and to Commissioner Kelly, and then just let them take it and see what the rest of that process could be, if that sounds fair.
Great.
Okay, all right. So that's what we'll do, and we'll begin with 112. The tag you're it is on me to get that drafted. And again, we'll have it on the agenda next time for the month of August for us to kind of refine it from my start point and then hand it off to John and Commissioner Kelly. Excellent, thank you. Second topic is a discussion of the commission's master plan objective that we adopted. And so hopefully in your read ahead, you were provided if you'll scroll up there for me, John.
Yep, sorry.
Yep. So as a bit of background for both the public and for the scout troop tonight, the Planning Commission does have a very specific role that's in the land use article from the state that says the Planning Commission for any municipality will draft and deliver a 10-year master plan to guide the town. And so we have that master plan. I'm holding it up here. And within that master plan, this body created vision for the town in 10 years, 10 years being 2033. This master plan applies from 2023 to 2033. And so that vision is kind of the high-level objective of what we want the town to be in 2033. And the journey in that 10 years is going to take us through goals that we hope to achieve. And to achieve those goals, we have a list of objectives. If we accomplish the objectives, we reach our goals, we've attained the vision in 2033. It's that kind of hierarchy that we laid out in the master plan. One of those objectives this Planning Commission took on for ourselves, and it is objective B.8.1, and it's worded up there for us to basically revise the design guidelines that help us in development and approval of various things within the town. Architecture style, elevations, roof lines, lighting, as we mentioned earlier, with liquidity in the downtown zone here. And so as a part of your read ahead, the Director of Planning, John, provided all the commissioners with copies of the design guidelines for additions and new construction for the town of Mount Airy, and also the second design guidelines, which are for the rehabilitation of historic properties in the town of Mount Airy. And so both of these documents were approved by the town council in 2010. And our objective is to take a hard look at those, put a wire brush on them, and bring them up to date and improve them. And of course, in doing that, we want to make sure they relate or align better to where the code calls out those guidelines in making decisions for such things as signs and so forth, site plans, et cetera. And so that objective that we wrote, commissioners, is up on that wall there. And we began by establishing a committee to revise both of these documents, comprised of 2 commission members, a town resident appointed by the mayor and approved by the council, the town zoning administrator, Mr. Breeding, and then the town engineer, Barney. And I believe, if I'm not mistaken, and please correct me, that the 2 commissioners that agreed to be on that committee when we set this objective, I believe it was Commissioner O'Malley, and I believe we had started with Commissioner Wallace, but then we shifted to Commissioner Beda. Is that correct? Okay. Yeah, gotcha. Okay, so that's good. I didn't want to misspeak and volunteer somebody who...
As long as you're okay with that, Heather. She feels like I kicked her off, which I didn't.
Is that okay? Is that good? Is that okay? So the 2 commission members are Commissioner O'Malley, who's absent tonight, and Commissioner Beda to your left, and the one resident at large, I believe, Judy.
Judy, she's not present tonight. I did reach out to her earlier, and she said she was going to possibly attend.
Gotcha.
But I will drop off her design guidelines to her house.
Super.
Possibly on my way out of town tonight.
Super. And to verify, John, her name was put before the council and approved.
That's correct.
Okay, so those 3, and of course yourself, the town administrator, and Barney, without saying, you guys are all in. So we have a formed committee.
Correct.
And in the implementation, as a suggestion, in all of these implementations across all the objectives we built in this master plan are suggestions because it's the objective owner up there who's going to finally decide, how am I going to achieve that deliverable? Our deliverable is improved design guidelines, both documents, or whatever, maybe one document. I'll leave that to the committee. So the next implementation suggestion is that the committee convene, come together, lay out a 6-month work plan that gets them to the improved version. Simple as that. That 6 month, if I recall, was put out there simply to put some kind of mark on the calendar, so we don't take it into 2 years or 3 years. So of course the committee can rule however they want to do that, but a work plan is suggested so they have some methodology, to get to that deliverable. The other part of that implementation just makes suggestion as to existing guidelines in other municipalities to kind of study, review, harvest the good ideas out of those other guidelines. Take what works, don't take what doesn't look reasonable, and see if those can be kind of screwed into the revised documents that we are getting to. The bottom line, as I have on the last bullet there, is just as these were approved by the council in 2010, the same approval will also be required with whatever revised documents that the committee comes up with. So I will stop there and open for any discussion or input as to any of the objective or the membership or the timeline from any of the commissioners.
The only input I have is, can I have a copy of that?
I'll send it to you.
Send me a copy of that with
I'll send it out to all the
the
planning
links.
commissioners.
Yeah, so I can have that digitally.
Yeah, I'll send a version where all of those links are hyperlinked.
Yeah, wonderful.
So you can bounce right into the Frederick document or the Carroll County document. Okay, good. So we'll notify Miss Judy, the citizen at large. I will notify Steve that that he and you, Brian, will kind of get together and figure out a workshop, get together, and go about it. Sounds great.
We probably will have to work around Judy's schedule somewhat, because I think, Brian, Steve's, of course, retired. Hopefully we can meet during the day would be the objective. Hopefully we can. So hopefully you're available during the day, and then possibly.
Yeah, we can work something out.
I mean, I'm sure Barney Quinn, he's available anytime I tell him to show up.
Gotcha.
I figured I saw him straight on by, so.
Okay.
So, yeah.
And Commissioner, I did it second time, Councilmember Kelly.
Councilmember Kelly.
I'm sorry. I have to say it repeatedly. Councilmember Kelly, do you have any input? I want to make one closing remark on this topic, but certainly welcome your comments on this effort.
I honestly don't have any more input than what you've given, so
Okay.
it's all great, and I've been called worse, so it's okay.
If you just, Ralph, if you just follow with liaison after that, you'll be fine. Because he's the commission liaison.
I got you. And the closing comment I alluded to just a moment ago was, I'm contemplating standing up before your next council meeting, which is on August 3rd, and just saying in the public comments portion, we have this master plan. We have an array of objectives that kind of get down into the task work of making this happen. The Planning Commission owns this one. We're moving forward, and maybe for the council's thoughts or deliberation, it wouldn't be a bad idea to set a calendar date for all the commissioners and boards and maybe the council to come together and let's say, hey, we've got work prescribed in this master plan. It's been out there approved since February of 2025. We've had time to digest it. There are objective owners, there are task owners. Would it be a good idea, knowing that we've got to give a report at the 5-year mark, I believe, right? So at 2028, the state does require the commission and the director of planning to provide the state Department of Planning a report on how well are we doing, and that's at the midway point of the 10 years. Correct me if I've got any of that wrong.
No, that's exactly right. And I did want I was thinking about this yesterday, and I was thinking maybe we could do it in December if that works for a lot of people. I think people are back from vacations, and I figured we don't have a typical meeting for the Planning Commission to have that joint commission meeting. I was thinking we could do it sometime in December possibly,
Right.
but just an idea of that month possibly being a good use at that time.
Yeah, I mean, again, I want to, because we have so many,
I think we used to do it in May, if I'm not mistaken, and Bill would probably know. I think I held one of them since I've been here. I think it used to be in May. We used to meet with all the different commissions.
okay.
Just thinking December might work.
There's another opportunity. Another opportunity that we pursued when we drafted, and started to implement the 13 master plan, okay? And the plan there was to once or preferably twice a year to ask for representatives of all the commissions to come together and give an update on where they were with what they proposed to do and their ability to implement. Give us an update where that is, okay? And do it in front of representatives of all of the commissions, because you're asking for their partnership and their feedback. And we did that for several years, and it was tremendously team building. It was really a great exercise. It could be done with almost every brand new master plan. And I like it because it asks for feedback from all of the commissions. This is a shared objective that we're working on. And it could be considered, as soon as we get some of these things nailed down, going forward in terms of the current master plan.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And again, just to wrap this up, we have to tell the state in less than 2 years how we're doing. I think we all agreed at the outset we didn't want this to become shelfware. In other words, we want it to be an actionable plan. We think it is, and maybe it's just a good time now because we've had time to digest it. Maybe it's a good time to start thinking about gripping hands across all the owners and get moving.
I would second the notion that maybe twice a year is better than one, right? And it is doable, right? So just for clarification, Ralph, you're suggesting that the design guideline update, right, using it as a springboard for the larger kickoff of the mid
Yeah, I guess
term plan?
that's a fair description. I guess another way to put it is, if leading by example is a good way to lead, we'll be the example where we're going to go after our objective, hoping that everyone else follows.
Great.
And we can somehow create a concerted effort, an aggregate effort, for all the reasons that Commissioner Butts gave. It's just good to cross-level all the efforts. So I may get up in August and just say, hey, we're going to go about the one that we own, maybe worthy of thinking about pulling together everybody for the rest of the objectives in the master plan. That's it.
Great, yeah, and I would second it, again, twice a year I think would be a minimum for representatives for the commissions to get together. Again, it's a recurring theme for me. I think the commissions, there's more synergistic opportunities than we generally take advantage of. So
I agree. Thanks so much.
It might be that we do, like you say, I think the December and potentially go back to the May, and we'll try to start budgeting for that. I think currently I'm budgeted for one per year. So we'll have to budget, next budget cycle we'll put in for 2 per year.
Okay. And if we can go to Ocean City and...
Yeah, I don't think so.
Just kidding.
Budget for the state dinner?
I'm just kidding. Okay, great discussion. Great discussion. Work to do, good energy on that. I'm going to close this topic, move to our last and third topic. This topic is a discussion I'm eager to have with the commissioners and with advice from council liaison. I got that right. With regard to the recently approved ordinance or code amendment, and I hope I do that ordinance and code amendment justice by saying something like new rezoning processes. Is that fair? Okay, and I'm not trying to imply anything other than just a shorthand phrase as to what 2026-02 ordinance is about. It's about new rezoning processes, things that are required to be done as part of a rezoning of a property. And before I get into why this discussion, I just want to make sure that everybody here in the room and the commissioners especially understand that in the context of municipal planning, there are generally two categories of rezoning a property, or oftentimes also said reclassifying its use, its permitted use. I'm speaking of residential zoning, commercial zoning, industrial zoning, those sorts of uses within property inside the municipal borders. And so there are two broad categories. There is what is referred to by the state as piecemeal rezoning. Piecemeal rezoning is the more common rezoning when a property owner comes in and says, hey, I currently reside on a residential zoned property. I now want it changed to another zoning classification. I'll just, for the sake of an example, say I now want to be zoned commercial. I will make that application to the town staff, and that piecemeal rezoning application typically within the state law has to have two ingredients to make it viable through the town staff. It has to prove that the current zoning is made in error, and the second reason for that application to be vetted and continued is that the property owner can argue that there's been a significant change in use or the community. Am I correct? Yeah, and I turn to the attorney. Is that a good thumbnail sketch?
Yeah,
Okay.
Is a substantial change in the character of the neighborhood.
Substantial change in the character of the neighborhood. And so I'm referring again to piecemeal, the more common property owner, Jane comes in and says, hey, I want it to change to something other than it currently is. That discussion on changing character or mistake would occur at that point with the town staff. The area that I'm exploring tonight is the area that's referred to as the category of what's called comprehensive rezoning. And going back to the master plan, as I've already alluded to, has a vision statement for the town to become, goals to achieve that vision, and then lower level, more detailed objectives and tasks in order to get those goals accomplished. And so as part of any growth ambition, growth goal, or growth design for a municipality, oftentimes comprehensive rezoning is a part of the toolbox for the commissioners to offer, to propose, to draft as a way to get that growth. What I'm speaking of here is if the council and the mayor say, hey, give us a plan that gives us some prescription for increasing the commercial growth within the town, the commercial presence within the town. And oftentimes that discussion, I'm kind of speaking to everybody here, oftentimes that discussion is generated because there's a desire from the citizens to increase the amount of local employment. We don't want to keep having people consider this a bedroom community. We don't want people to always be forced over the next 10 years to travel to DC to find a good job, travel to Frederick, travel to, you get the understanding. Can we develop more commercial so that commercial employment opportunities arise with that growth? There's other reasons that a growth element focused on possible rezoning can arise, and that is, well, we want to increase the retail tax base for the town because, you know, we want to be able to continue to support the cost of running a town. And commercial enterprises, business enterprises, they bring us the added tax revenue. There's a variety of reasons that we may want to consider a growth element within a master plan. And again, comprehensive rezoning would say, well, let's take a swath, not one property as I described in the piecemeal rezoning, but maybe an aggregate, 10, 20 plats that are currently zoned A, and we are prescribing, we're proposing, we're drafting that they move to another rezoning classification, perhaps commercial in this case I'm giving, so that we can now have more land that would be available for commercial development. So that's kind of the stage I'm setting here in this discussion. The other thing I'll mention is, what are some of the other tools? Ralph, are we confined to comprehensive rezoning when we talk about enabling or prescribing growth within the town? No, there are other tools that we have in our toolbox. We have something called Urban Renewal Authority. Our master plan does in fact advocate for Urban Renewal Authority. That's an authority that the council does have to tackle what are often referred to as blighted properties, properties that are in disrepair, not being used to their purpose. They're overgrown. There's a lot of potential. Urban Renewal Authority addresses that type of property. And again, that property can then be, through that authority, pushed to kind of become a really handsome commercial opportunity property. That sort of effort. There are also ways where we can ease the development requirements within the zoning code, so that if we want to enhance commercial growth, we could say, well, maybe we can ease back on what has to come forward for a commercial development plan, a commercial site plan. And then lastly, I'm not a strong advocate for loosening the Adequate Public Facilities Ordinance or the APFSO certification. I talked to our scouts about that as part of the preface to our meeting tonight, that adequate public facilities are always, at least for me, and I think that sentiment is shared by the commissioners here. We never want to kind of exceed the capacity of 7 areas that are critical as public facilities within this town. But I'm being frank here, we could loosen those and we could certify development in a commercial aspect amongst those 7 areas and let a site plan move forward, even though maybe we judge that the law enforcement capabilities aren't adequate for that additional business, or fire and EMS, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm just trying to be all encompassing here, that comprehensive rezoning is not just the sole toolbox element for us to do commercial growth or any growth within our plan. It is but one of them. And so in all of that, we have the new processes of 2026-02. There you go. And so again, I want to make sure that we know how, when it comes time for us to write the next master plan, how do we comply and how do we adhere to the guidance that we have in this new ordinance? And so the very first beginning of it is the rezoning and reclassification request and rationale. Now, for the piecemeal property owner, that's clear. Joe, Jane, property owner, they walk in, they talk to the town staff. It's based upon mistake or error or significant change in character, and that process begins. It's clear. I'm not here to debate that. But in the drafting of proposed comprehensive rezoning within the master plan effort, what do the commissioners think is going to be the trigger for us to begin that process? Is it just our discussions and thoughts about these 5 homes, these 8 homes, these 10 homes? What do you think, Commissioner Hadley?
Well, remember, some people came in and asked for it, and that sort of sparked a discussion. We kind of had like a look, and we were like, maybe this, but then people started asking for other things, and that involved a deeper discussion about the area and the impact, and that was gut-wrenching,
Sure.
to say the least, because you can't please everybody.
No, I got that. And so let me kind of get us a little past that. That's a very good point. Let me get us to that next point where we as a commission in drafting, and again, I'm emphasizing we're proposing, we're prescribing, we're recommending. I'm not referring to a master plan that's at the approved stage. I'm in the we're building stage. And we have an idea as to maybe we can get that growth element to happen if we were to rezone, reclassify, and I'm just picking a number here, 5 properties located on that street. You with me? Okay. that's a trigger. That's a beginning of a thought. And so I just want to explore that with the commissioners. Does that now, and I'm looking to John, does that now trigger the criteria that's within that new ordinance for us to do evaluations and studies? It's not approved. It's just a prescription of comprehensive rezoning. What are your thoughts, John?
Yeah, I mean, I guess if we're looking at an application that comes in and there's multiple or even a single property that's asking for rezoning because of, if you want to say the piecemeal, yeah, so that would be, when we would start looking at all the requirements they would have to go through as part of this ordinance 26-2. That would sort of trigger it in my eyes, and they would have to then start submitting those applications, the fees, so we can advertise and go through the process that way.
Yeah, and that's a good point, because I don't want to impose a fee on any of those proposed 5 property owners when it's still just in the thinking stage. You with me? I don't want to levy on them all those requirements when we're just discussing it. Do you follow where I am?
Yeah.
Okay.
Should we start with an inventory? Just take a wider look at the town, see if there are any blighted properties or what would fall under blight, and then start there and look at that area?
Yeah, certainly. I would think that would be the low-hanging fruit for us to look at properties that are not being properly or optimally used. We could certainly, and that kind of goes back to the Urban Renewal Authority. Yeah. And again, I'm not dictating here that on the next master plan, comprehensive rezoning must occur. I'm just saying, if it does, I just want to make sure that we adhere to the new ordinance, okay? And I'm foot stomping that. So here's my thought, that, when we draft the vision and the goals and I'll stop right there. When we draft the vision and goals, maybe it would be a good idea that at that point we get a discussion with the council at that time that says, first off, do you agree to that vision in the next 10 years? Do you agree with the goals? And if those goals are ratified in draft by the council, we then have a discussion as to how we're going to now prescribe getting to those goals using these elements like comprehensive rezoning and so forth. And that discussion occurs early on in the drafting of the master plan, so we don't get off base like we did last time with prescribing comprehensive rezoning that comes full circle and now becomes an unappetizing thing. That's kind of what I'm getting at. And so does that sound like a reasonable path, that we make sure that we're on board with the council and the mayor as to the vision that we're drafting, the goals that we're drafting, and then once that's done, we can now talk about the how do we get there, and we can talk about CR and all these other things. Is that fair?
I think it's managing the process, and it's asking for a team approach, but taking on the responsibility to take that lead in terms of planning, in terms of requesting feedback. And so, what do you think about this and this? Are we where we want to be?
Yeah. I personally don't want to get crosswise like we did on this last go around with regard to some, proposed comprehensive rezoning. I don't think anybody wants to revisit that. And so I'm really honestly, sincerely trying to get to a point where we don't get there and we do it kind of methodically with regard to, and it may be that the council says, no, we don't want to see comprehensive rezoning as a part of your toolkit. Limit it to some other things. Give us your ideas on that. And that's a fair conversation. That's kind of where I'm at. But we would have that conversation early on. We didn't have that conversation in this. We talked about the vision and the goals more toward the end. I believe that's kind of how we handled it. So let's do an upfront kind of path on that. Your thoughts?
Question, how many planning commission, town council workshops are there typically leading up to the master plan ratification?
The master plan, if I remember, I could get you a true number, I'm just be guessing off the top of my head, but we held one each month for a year above and beyond our planning commission meetings. So we were discussing the different chapters, might have been 18 months that we worked through it, because again, it was through one planning commission and then to this planning commission, it sort of trickled into.
But with the town council.
Once again,
Town council members did come to,
Okay.
yeah, it was kind of an open invitation for anybody to come at those.
it was just
they
an
were
open public meeting.
Yeah, they were public meetings.
But they weren't all joint workshops.
Right. But there were at
Technically
least,
not.
I want to say, weren't there 1, 2, or more?
You're saying joint workshops? I didn't hear you.
Workshop.
I didn't hear you say joint
Yes.
workshops. I just heard workshops. I
Yeah.
apologize.
And I
There was
think
2
that-
total.
But we probably could have had more. It would have been nice to have had throughout the process.
Boiled down version of what we did back 10 years ago.
Yeah,
The joint workshops typically happen closer to when the planning commission has finished.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's better to do it earlier in the process
Yeah.
if that's what you're getting at.
It was, I thought it was about 2, which is what I'm seeing. And the first one would have been about, like, when was the,
6 months prior, or 8 months
about
prior
6 months
to
prior was the first one, and then
prior
the
to
second one would have
adoption.
been a month or 2 before. Right?
adoption, right?
Right, okay.
I mean, maybe we could, the next time around, just have like a workshop in the beginning.
Sort of a kickoff joint
Yeah,
workshop.
kickoff work, and then like, because we kind of think we had, we had to go off and do our part. And I will admit, there were times where I was like, I need input from council, or I need input, it was hard. So it would be nice to everybody work together, especially because it's a big project.
And I think another part of that is that you announce that intention.
Bill, can you just
That
move closer
goal
to your mic,
is
just so it's
announced.
being recorded, so just so people can't hear you out in the
Yeah, there we go.
radio world?
No, I
It's
said,
such a
I
good
think
voice.
another part of this is that well in advance of this process, you announce it. Okay, that, so that the public gets it, they have the opportunity to give feedback. We list all the objectives and aims that we will have, all right? And then you lay out what that plan in the process will be, and you start to follow it. And everybody is a part of it. This is also an excellent topic to get feedback on from MPCA and other planning commissions around the state.
Yeah, so we had 18 workshops. They were all announced in building the master plan. We had 18 workshops. That's not including when we worked as a part of these regular monthly meetings. We also sometimes had it on our agenda to work through some chapters and so forth as a part of our agenda on the monthly meetings. But yeah, 18 workshops. We announced those. We invited the public. Council members would attend occasionally and weigh in to that.
It was posted on the website. We also advertised it. It was out there.
Right, so the point of my question, and I think Commissioner Hatley just, piggybacked on it. It's so the official joint workshops with the council were much later in the process, right? So, Ralph, I think to your point, it might be appropriate for a kickoff sort of joint workshop.
Correct.
Where goals are drafted, visions are drafted, right? And is this the right direction? If not, what is?
There you go.
Right.
Simple as that. Yeah.
Sort of obvious here, but 2 years before 33, I mean, it will be that council in place that will then vote.
Right.
Right, so.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, and again, kind of in a different context, but a lot of folks may understand it. It's really just that kind of structure called ends, ways, and means. And that maybe up front in the development of a master plan, everybody needs to grip hands to understand what are the ends we are desiring. When 2033 or the end of the 10-year period arrives, what's that end state of the town? And so we agree on that. And that is comprised in a vision statement that's comprised with goal statements, right? Kind of working through that hierarchy. And then after that agreement, we can get into now what are the ways and means to achieve those. And in that discussion, we can talk about comprehensive rezoning. Is that appropriate? Where would we apply it? How much of it would we apply? Would it be 5 homes? Would it be 50 homes? That sort of discussion, I think, would be healthy. And then with all that kind of guidance, we can now pick up from that early meeting and now we can develop a plan that's going to be more aligned with the council's thinking toward the end.
Well, and if you remember correctly, too, we actually, you went out to, I think both of us attended different commissions as well to get their input, to put their skin in the game, as it would be.
Exactly.
Or spoon in the chili.
Yeah.
Just to, so we were getting feedback from those different commissions as we were going through that process as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Should that be something that we just agree with, if all the liaisons in the town council, should they ask their commissions, would they be up for a kickoff meeting for the next master plan in the beginning? Just say, hey, think about the goals, and so we don't go through conflicting goals or missions or anything.
Well, hopefully, we're going to be having these dual joint work session commission meetings for all the different commissioners. So hopefully, prior to that, we're all on this, reading from the same book, on the same page.
Well, I mean, like on the next, like. when we
Right, but I'm
start
saying,
the
but
next-
hopefully these joint commissions,
then, okay.
if they're bi-yearly, we're to a point where we're all in the same boat, rowing the same direction, hopefully.
No, I just wanted to open this now. I know it's way ahead of when the next planning commission starts on this. It's probably going to be 2031, 2032 in my, knowing how much work we applied on this, I think 2032 would be a little late, because it does frankly take a couple years, doesn't it, John?
Right, it might be 2030.
It may even start.
We start
Yeah.
talking about it then,
Yeah,
To
yeah.
have these pre-joint work session preliminary meetings. But again, as to your point, will they be the same council that votes on it? Possibly not. If we're starting these 30, and then, there might be a change of the guard, be it planning commission, town council, the mayor. I mean, there's always changing, so we have to all be flexible.
Yeah.
My 2 cents is, so your point is resonating with me, to have that kickoff sort of vision. Like what, are we going north or northeast, right?
Right.
Let's pick a direction. I think my 2 cents is that down to the details, if there's an appetite for comprehensive rezoning to solve, to go in a certain direction, I don't know that if 5 or 50 homes, those details, it's probably too in advance, right? And that's when you get to sort of molding that part of that solution, right, that vision, I think that's where, when we start identifying swaths of properties, to me, that's where this kicks in.
Right. Yeah, no, I agree with you. It may be that, we just eat this elephant a little bit at a time, and that maybe the first meeting is simply visioning goals. And then the council says, come back the next meeting and tell us kind of the ways you think you can achieve those goals, and let's have that discussion. And we'll give you kind of out of bounds or in bounds kind of guidance on what to consider in now drafting those ways and means. And that would be another meeting. And then maybe even a third meeting as to what those elements would actually be. And so we have this kind of like gripping of hands as we work through the process, rather than having a joint meeting at the very end as we're approaching the approval or adoption date. And so, yeah, I think it just makes sense.
I just have a quick thought. There's changes happening around the town too. All of the growth, like Newmarket and what they're doing. And so we'll have more data in 2030 about how that's going to affect us as well. And that may change some things.
Yeah. And again, I know I'm leaning forward because, 2031 is 5 years from now, but 2030,
So we're going to have to start.
I was actually starting at 2029 is what I was thinking.
maybe even
As we
2029.
continue to talk, I was like,
Before we know it, it's going to start next month.
Yeah,
So
it's time to start writing it now.
Yeah. Okay. So any further discussion on this? I'm not so much inclined to write kind of an after action on this current plan and some guidance that reflects this. But I'd like to memorialize or document this discussion to kind of advise that next commission.
Well, and I just wanted to point out one thing as we were talking. I was sitting here thinking, if a piecemeal rezoning comes in, they're going to have to go through the process. They're going to have to submit the fee. If they want to go through a rezoning process, it's a process, and there's attorneys we have to pay. There's notifications we have to send out. We have to do publications in the newspaper. There's a cost incurred, which is part of that rezoning request. And again, so, if we have a piecemeal rezoning comes in, we'll have to go through this process, and it'll hopefully define, maybe if there's some hiccups or hurdles that we have to look at, might be something we have to go through. But again, when it comes to a comprehensive rezoning, that's typically not tethered with a fee for the applicant that's asking
Correct.
for rezoning. So,
Correct.
but even though there are fees that are incurred, it would be something that would be part of the master plan process. Does that make any sense?
Although there would be fees incurred as part of the master plan. So if the prescribed comprehensive rezoning were approved by the council as a way to get to those goals, that would then mandate those affected property owners with paying the fee. We would be unilaterally mandating they pay the fee and begin the, let's take the case of the property owner that says, not no, but heck no, do I agree in changing my property to commercial? So I'm just walking the dog on that.
Right, and that's what I was trying to make you guys understand. And we can talk to, as Tom, maybe he might have some guidance, but again, if it's a piecemeal rezoning, there's an application fee that would be part of that.
That's clear.
When it comes to the comprehensive master plan in this past one, we didn't apply any fee or any fee to anybody who came in for rezoning.
Correct.
It's just what you do comprehensively. I don't know if you have something to add.
Yeah, so there are occasions, or have been, maybe not in this last master plan, but I do remember the one in 13, the rezonings were a combination. There were people who did come, say, I want my property rezoned. I don't know whether we had them fill out an application. The form
There was no application.
is neutral. It's not just for change mistake. It's for any request. And I think in those circumstances, you are well within your rights to impose that fee. On the other hand, in 13, adopted 16, there was a collection of properties where the town went to the property owners and said, this is what we're thinking to achieve certain objectives. We would be interested in at least exploring rezoning your property from what it is now to something else. Do you have an interest in that? And by and large, the ones that said, no, I do not, that was left on the table. Others said, well, yeah, gee whiz, yeah, sure. And so on those occasions, I don't think you're probably, you want to go to them and say, hey, you want to rezone your property, now here's a $300 bill. But in those circumstances, you have, or the town does have the rights, you can waive when you charge, make the charges, and define when you do and when you don't.
Right. No, I agree with that. Let me ask you, Tom, just kind of the final question. Do you think the rezoning process that we're looking at today, it marries well to the comprehensive rezoning path that we've been talking about here? Does it fit in well?
You mean the 2026-2?
Correct.
Well, I think it's both, because contextually, you have to understand that even in piecemeal midterm rezoning, the council has to decide first whether there's a mistake or a change. But what the case law says is that even upon that finding, that the council must go on to the next thing, and that is to determine whether they're going to make the legislative determination to go ahead and rezone, which is the same determination you make in a comprehensive rezoning. And indeed, the state code requires, even with a change mistake application, it comes here for a recommendation, just like happens with a master plan.
Gotcha.
It just so happens that the comprehensive rezoning recommendations from this body come accompanied by a package of master plan recommendations.
And again, at the proposed, what I think we've gathered here, if we got council agreement on the goals, the large high-level goals, and if we have that conversation as to we're considering comprehensive rezoning as part of achieving that goal, and there was general agreement on that prescription, what would be the appropriate next step for the commission or the town staff to notify those affected properties of us considering them as being part of a comprehensive rezoning? And so I'm kind of in the context of notification. And again, it's just draft, it's just proposed. Would that be done after that agreement with the council, and there's just a letter advising them, your property is under consideration as a part of a master plan comprehensive rezoning? Or would we say, you're welcome to come to the public hearing, which is a requirement, and voice your agreement or opposition? I'm just trying to fit in the notification part right now.
Well, I don't necessarily think that that's completely a legal question, really. That has to do with the good judgment of the Planning Commission and how it chooses to do its business. But I can speak to what occurred in 13, and I use that as a reference simply because I recall a number of rezonings being recommended at the time.
Okay.
I believe what happened, subject to maybe John doing some research on it, is that the Planning Commission set forth and agreed to what its objectives would be. And from there, they went ahead and, of course, they were fielding applications from the jump, okay, even before the objectives were set. But from there, I believe that the Planning Commission then said, you know what, these objectives fit with perhaps a set of rezonings that go with it. And then I believe that outreach was made to certain property owners who had not themselves requested yet a rezoning. And that's when the process began. And I do recall that it was several meetings. The people whose property it was were invited. They did come. They spoke about what they wanted or did not want. And so, as I recall, again, subject to maybe John doing some research, maybe Heather probably remembers it better than anybody. I believe that occurred over many
Months.
And the people
And
whose
meetings.
properties it was came to each of those, or they were invited to come. They were given notice at each time.
Gotcha. And then their sentiment would be registered, documented, and then the Planning Commission would come back with that input from the property owners as to making adjustments on the comprehensive prescription, eliminating that property that's in opposition or leaving in the one that is for it, and that kind of give and take. I'm just imagining that discussion with the property owners at some appropriate point, and I'm talking prior to the public hearing, which is required on the draft plan, just the notification that we're considering comprehensive rezoning. And we welcome your sentiment kind of thing in a workshop, coming to the town staff and expressing whether you're in on that or you're definitely opposed to it, that kind of conversation.
And I think the new ordinance, and I don't have it memorized, so somebody will have to better speak to it, does provide for notification rather explicitly when somebody's property is going to be discussed.
It does.
Yeah. Okay. So I think, in kind of a rear view mirror look at the new processes, the way we did it before, I want to make it better. I think we've agreed to early on discussions would kind of make everything better. Upfront examination of the ways to do some proper goal, achievement with all the things that I listed. And then notification as appropriate to those people that we think could be in that array of rezoning. And then take it from there. John, do you have any input on kind of that thumbnail sketch of a way to go? And those affected property owners, we get a letter, I would imagine, from you that the commission is proposing the rezoning of your property in order to achieve, a larger commercial growth area, that sort of thing.
Yeah, that sounds good to me. Again,
I mean, is that reasonable?
yeah, and in the past, for the specific South Main annexation or South Main rezoning, we did notify them prior to the meeting. But again, that was 2 years prior to actually coming back and having that rezoning meeting.
Right.
So there was a duration between there, and good notification is definitely something we should be striving for.
So I think, when I'm reading the ordinance and it says reasonable notice shall be provided in advance of planning commission meetings at which a proposed reclassification and/or recommendations thereon are discussed. We talked about having 18 meetings, right, before we had the joint workshops. To me, if we're discussing properties that need to be part of rezoning and the master plan, in those 18 meetings, that's when the notification needs to go out, because those are public meetings and the people who are being affected should be able to attend.
And not every meeting was talked about rezonings. We did it by chapter, by chapter, by chapter.
Yeah, but when we
Right,
do.
but when we
Yeah,
do.
of course.
Yeah. No, that's fair. That's fair. So we add that detail to the announcement of our workshops and give them the opportunity. And I know I've said it already about 3 times. And of course, they would always have the opportunity to make comments at the public hearing that we're required to hold before we send it up to the council for your consideration and adoption. You also do a public hearing. So there's a public hearing under your charter at the council level to make sure that those affected or any resident within the town has input or an opportunity for input. So there's actually 2 public hearings.
Well, and so there's a public for the council, right? There's a public hearing for the master plan, I believe.
Correct.
Right? And then there would be a public hearing for the rezoning vote.
If implemented.
If implemented, right.
Correct.
If included in the master plan.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So I did want to point out, again, just to restate, in 2031, or 30, when the master plan is kicked off, right, I don't envision any specific properties being identified at that time or discussed at that time, right? Yeah. So then I think the proper question is, in what draft of the master plan does this kick in? Right, because at some point you'll be putting and discussing specific properties.
Right.
It may not be 2 or 3 years out, but it's certainly going to be 6 months to a year out, right? So.
And especially if somebody requests it, should it kick in then? Or, because there was a cutoff and people came in saying, I didn't know and I want to get rezoned, and there was chaos.
Well, speaking for myself, the spirit of the ordinance is to have a foundation and report leading up to the master plan implementation, the master plan vote. Right. So, again, Ralph, I think what you're trying to get at is between the 2 to 3 years of starting the process and the vote for the master plan, right? Where does this come into account? And I think it's when specific properties start to get identified in the master plan process.
Yeah.
Right, and it can be very early. I don't think we should be prescriptive about the timing, because
Nope.
we can talk about it whenever. So
Yeah.
I think if we know it's going to be on the agenda, we notify the property owners.
And I do think we still need to create that cutoff time, because if not, you'll have people coming in at the last minute. Again, I'd even put it on the website that we were, not taking any more rezoning requests, January 1, I think it was, that I set the date for that to stop, because it would just continue on I received three more afterwards, and I had to tell them no, and that didn't make them very happy, but, we just continue on, so.
For inclusion in the master plan, you're saying?
Correct.
Yeah. So I think I'm comfortable where this has gone. So I think we've agreed early on, we ought to have a good discussion with council and the mayor as to what we want the town to be, vision. How do we want to get there, goals? And then we come back and we have a second discussion driven by the planning commission to offer the ways that we can explore getting to those, and give the council and the mayor the opportunity to say, run with that, go with that, emphasize that, take that off the table, et cetera, et cetera. And that if any of that early discussion does include comprehensive rezoning as a tool to achieve a goal, particularly like a growth goal or that sort of thing, we would then come up with what we think would encompass, what properties would encompass that tool, we would give notification. No, we would come up with that, and then we'd come back to the council and say, here's what we're looking at as a way to get comprehensive rezoning done. And then again, the council would come back and say, that's too many properties, don't go there, go over there to do that. We would have that kind of guidance also. And then once we conclude that, then I think whatever is still left on the table for rezoning a property would then go into the notification phase. No?
I don't know. I don't think so. I think it should be, if we're looking at parcels for rezoning, and there's communications in an open meeting between planning and the town council, and that subject property is being discussed, those people need to be notified. We're discussing their property.
Okay.
Yeah, that should not be.
They should have the opportunity to reach out to their representatives with their thoughts on that, right? Before that gets too far down the road.
They should be included.
So we'd give notification when the commission comes up with prescriptions of comprehensive rezoning. We would give notification that we're going to bring that to the council in a discussion. You're welcome to be at that discussion.
Right, even if I think it might even be one of those things, like if we're even thinking about those parcels, they should be notified of their, hey, we're
Okay.
You know, I don't know if we need to put a sign in their front yard like we've done in the past, but if we're discussing a potential property for rezoning, and that person should be notified, we're talking about a possibility of rezoning their property, they should be notified.
That's fair. I mean, does that sound, that sounds upfront, agreeable? Steve, you've been quiet. Any thoughts?
You must not be feeling well.
I wasn't part of the process the first time. I don't know that I'm up to speed on the whole thing. So I don't want to speak out of turn because I'm
No problem.
not familiar with the process.
No problem.
I agree with everything that's going on, especially that if somebody's property is being considered for anything, whether it's rezoning or anything that the town wants to do, they should be notified ahead of time.
Okay.
And to that point, I just wanted to piggyback on one more thing, I'm sorry. But so there's a piecemeal property that comes in that says, hey, there's a change or mistake, or there's a parcel got rezoned right beside me and I want to change my rezoning.
Right.
You know, again, any joining property owner to that, directly touching that property, would be notified of us discussing that piecemeal rezoning, and they would have to be part of the public hearing, and they'd be all notified. The property would be signed to let the people that drive by that even aren't adjoining property owners, that property is requesting rezoning.
It's a good point.
Going through that process. So everybody that's adjoining would be notified. Let's take South Main annexation. We don't notify everybody that lives on South Main that it's coming. It's just the people that are directly attached to that parcel.
Right.
You don't notify the whole street that it's coming because we put a sign in the front yard a week ahead of time of the meeting. So if they're interested, they see the sign. I mean, because where do you draw the stop line of who you're notifying, you know?
Right.
It's just, it kind of snowballs into something that, do I need to notify every citizen of every rezoning that's happening?
And,
you know.
And again, John, we're thinking about it. We're looking at it.
I was going to a piecemeal rezoning. I piggybacked on that to go to the next thing. If an application came in,
Right.
that's what we would be notifying anybody adjoining that property of that rezoning.
I understand. Okay. Okay. A quick question to Tom. If with great respect to our council liaison, if I were to ask other council members in this room for their thoughts with regard to this discussion, would that constitute a quorum? Would I not be able to elicit their comments? Because 3 is a quorum.
What is the question again?
Right, but you're in an open meeting.
Okay.
The rule is if you have a quorum, you don't have closed meetings.
Okay. So
It's also not a meeting of that body. It's your meeting.
but their presence doesn't make a quorum?
Nope, as long as they don't huddle outside and talk and text that the.
I got you. Okay.
I'm not saying that's ever been done, but I've heard things.
Okay, with that, okay, with that, and please bridle me if any of it gets into my concern that, you know, we're having a ex parte council meeting is kind of what I'm alluding to. I don't want to get into that. Let me just invite Councilmember Munder. Do you have some thoughts on this? Because again, I'm invoking the council interaction early on with the Planning Commission's drafting, notification. Any thoughts quickly to share with us on doing this better?
Well, quickly I would say starting off as soon as possible would be good. The concept of vacation, getting things out there is good, the overall concept of it, but I'm seeing just from these discussions, there'll be some implementation concerns. I don't want to say nightmarish, but as Council Member Wallace brought up and some other people, it's like, where do you start and how many times? Like they were implying, like every meeting that potentially a property is mentioned, you would have to notify them and things of that nature. So the implementation might become overly cumbersome, and then somebody could claim, well, you notified me 5 times before, I'm on this agenda now, but I was never notified. Why is that? I know that on the state level, notifications always come up as a way to derail a process. So if you start once, you need to make sure that they're notified every time. So just not one person can come and say, I was never notified. So you need to stop the process or go back to the beginning of it. Sometimes it might be look at the way the implementation is, notify and potentially have them request or send you a letter saying potentially this property opts out. My property opts out of the master planning rezoning process. That way you have it on record that they choose not to be part of it, and it stops the constant notification of a property for meetings, because the way I'm understanding this interpretation now is that for every time that property would come up, no matter what discussion, they would be notified.
I got you.
So a week out, 2 weeks out, does the agenda change? Does it something? Also say one thing leads to another on the discussions. Well, say Joe's property is on the agenda, but Jane's isn't, but that they border one another. So you start talking to Joe's about Joe's property, then you just naturally go into Jane's property.
Yeah, I got you.
And you can't discuss it because it's not on the agenda.
No,
So it's something of that nature. You need to think out of the process, but starting earlier is the best way to get thoughts from the council and things. But just try and make sure that I want to say, stay on target. Don't get derailed, because the council can kind of change its mind and think, as you said, it could change in midstream. Yeah. So which one do you listen to? Do you listen to the council that when it started, or do you listen to a new council that comes on board and changes the whole thing?
Yeah, so we would have to be disciplined in making sure that the contemporary council members are apprised of prior decisions and guidance, and allow them an opportunity to adjust it now that they're the new council members, of course, yeah. So we would have to that. But I think you hammered on a point here, is that we go through the notification, including adjacent property owners.
Yeah.
We need to make sure we document that.
Yes.
And it may be, I kind of was liking the idea, and again, I hope I'm not getting over my skis here. I like the idea that maybe we just give them an upfront first notification. Do you opt in or opt out? For those that are convinced with what information they've seen and heard, they may say, don't include me, or include me. Some of them may say, well, it's too early for me to make a decision. I need to see the grander plan as to why I'm included. That's fair too. Yeah. And I need to go to more workshops. And so yeah, I understand what you, and so we're trying to portray the better way to do this.
Yeah.
And try to get our hands around those steps that we didn't do last times that are wise to invoke on the next go around. Simple as that.
I mean, notification, as much information that's out there is good, and and just try and keep the public informed as much and as often as can. But sometimes not too much information, too much notification becomes a reminder to some people that I don't want this. Why do you keep notifying me? If there's no way for them to be removed from the process, per se, by their choice, mind you, once the notification begins, there could be, you could get angry residents coming every time, like, why you keep notifying me?
Yeah, and again, I want to emphasize through this whole kind of trying to reimagine the next planning commission in this endeavor, absolutely, without debate, the council holds the authority on what will be done and what won't be done.
Yeah.
And that guidance, what's acceptable to the council, what's allowable, what's a good idea, even in those broad terms. Let's do that all through that process so we don't get to the adoption decision meeting and go, I'm against it.
Yeah.
I don't like it. And we're like, okay, we're now back to this step, and we should have closed that out. So I'm with you there.
I do like.
If I could ask for Councilmember Demoter an opportunity, if he wants to talk to this. I'm sorry, did you have a last
I just
point?
wanted to say is I do like the fact that get the two bodies together as soon as possible to try and get the goals and overall objectives not hammered out, but at least tentatively agreed upon at the onset of it, and try and make sure the zoning and the rezoning of the properties is first up, because a lot of the master plan is like the natural resource. A lot of the other elements are just general, I don't want to say boilerplate, but you look at it and natural elements don't change that often, and other things in the master plan.
Gotcha.
So get to the things that are most important first, and that way it can be handled. But 3 or 4 years, about 3 years out would be good. Not 4, but 3. It'll be here before you know it.
Regrettably, I think you're right.
Yeah, thank you, sir.
All right, thank you. Councilmember DeMora, I just want to offer you also any input from your listening to this discussion. And again, the emphasis is, I'm sorry?
I just had a question. Councilmember Munder was talking about each time we brought up a property, we'd have to notify them, and I guess maybe this is a question for Tom. If at the very first point that we decide that we're going to discuss a property, we officially notify them, whether it's certified letter or whatever it is, does that then put the onus on them to keep up with when their property is going to be discussed, or would we have to notify them every time?
The ordinance says every time.
Okay.
Yeah, so I think anytime it's on the workshop agenda, formal meeting agenda, anything that alludes to their property being encompassed in that discussion, they have to be aware that so that's a town staff repeated effort. Is that fair, John? Yep.
Yes.
Yep. Gotcha.
I believe in 13, just so you'll know, that the specific properties that were to be discussed were on the agenda. And the discussion did not go beyond those properties, and hence it made it easier to identify who was to be notified each time. So it probably takes some measure of, I don't know, discipline, if you will. To
Very
say,
specific.
These are the properties that are discussed, and the next one, these properties are up.
Gotcha.
We did that as well, I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken, that we did not segregate, but separate certain parcels.
Yeah, I
for
do recall.
discussion, because it was more of like, from one zoning to another zoning. So if it was going from this to that, we clustered them. If it was going from this to that, we clustered them. So we did do something similar to that.
Yeah, we did, because, again, not looking too much in the rearview mirror, because we came to discussions where we felt like there needed to be a mix of rezoning. Remember? We had some commercial, we had some light commercial, we had some that we were pondering to remain residential. All up and down that corridor as to what's the optimal resetting of those classifications. So it was a healthy discussion, but I think we could have made it better if we had brought in those property owners or at least advised them that we're going to have that on the table for that night's workshop and that sort of thing. Commissioner Walls?
I think, not to derail, but I do think that we should do the same with the annexations. There should be a robust discussion about annexations listed in the master plan, just as there are for rezonings.
Okay. And in that case, those would be outside the municipal boundary residents that we would be notifying, or?
I wasn't talking about, I don't recall having robust discussions about every future annexation area in the
Okay.
master plan. So I was just throwing that out there as a recommendation for planning for the next one, that we schedule robust discussions on each annexation,
Okay.
future annexation area potential anyway, and what the intent is for those properties.
But again, stretching your good point, and I'm not opposed to it. If the property being considered for annexation involved 30 county residents, would that go so far as to having to notify them because they're in Carroll County or they're in Frederick County? I don't think it's an annexation discussion.
To your point, like you're saying, so, you know, most of the annexations except for the one were ones from the previous plan. So
Correct.
those discussions happened back in 2023,
But
or
the ownership-
2012, or what, 2013 master plan. So, you know, that being said, most of them just transferred over. I don't know if are we going to go back through and look at each of those annexations again to determine?
I think that you should, because the people who were in 2013 planning were probably not on 2023 planning for the most part. And they
Okay.
might need a refresh of what those properties are. And I think that we should make sure that if there's something listed as a future annexation area, we talk about, you know, we give each the same treatment in the plan, and that we say, you know, where it's located, what
And
it
so
should
that-
be used for. I wasn't talking about notification as much as just the discussion on the annexation areas, and because that's part of good planning for the town, so.
But again, and I know you're not saying it's per se, but in such a discussion on annexation, there is no requirement, or is there, Tom, with regard to notifying the residents that these would be county residents that reside in that potential annexation area? There's not an implication we have to notify them of.
Right, so let's distinguish them. You're not talking about annexation per se. You're simply discussing whether or not a property should or should not be included the municipal growth element, which does not obligate the town to annex, but at least gives it the option to do so if in the next 10 years it presents itself.
Let's clarify.
No, there's not a requirement in any code that I'm aware of that requires a notification to property owners whose properties are being considered for municipal growth element inclusion.
Okay.
And you can't do it.
Okay. You've been patient. We've had these side stray rounds here, but any thoughts about this whole discussion about how do we improve that process when it comes to comprehensive rezoning ideas, proposals?
Well, again, and appreciate the opportunity. I mean, I understand you're trying to think through all the wickets you have to go through, or what may come up or may not come up. I think if you look at the ordinance, which is now code, it's all there. I mean, in terms of public notification processes, you look under section A and new section C, and it tells you what you have to do. It's there. I appreciate the concept of early on trying to understand big picture, what direction do we want the town to go in terms of growth or not growth, conservation or not conservation, so that you have those kind of boundaries, and then the planning commission maybe would start going in and looking at potential properties and things like that. What I want to emphasize is once you get to the point where you think you may want to rezone a certain set of properties, you have to continue now and follow through the process on that flow chart. In other words, let's say, to your example, you want to put more commercial growth somewhere. You identify 8 properties somewhere in the town. Now you have to actually go and look at those properties, go through the analytical process, apply the criteria that are in the code to say, what are the positive and negative potential impacts of rezoning those properties to commercial and the surrounding communities? And you would consistently apply those criteria that are in the ordinance. And if I were the planning commission, per the code, you would turn to the town planner and say, okay, town planner, we think we got these 8 properties. You're the town planner, you have the expertise. Go do the analysis against the criteria, put together a report, bring that back to the planning commission, and then you as the planning commission get to have that foundation and start deliberating on the pros and cons of indeed including those properties for rezoning. And to your conversation and to Commissioner Wallace's points, as you go through that, that analysis is going to inform you, and you may say, you know what, we thought a couple commercial rezonings over here would be good for growth, but impact-wise, through the analysis against the criteria and listening to the public comments, that doesn't seem like a viable approach. We may have to do something different. So that analysis and public input will help inform you as you go. So that's it. I mean, you follow the process, follow the flow chart, apply the process and the criteria consistently. The town planner has a role to provide you with the foundational analysis that helps you as volunteers do your work. And then just the last point, and I'll highlight this, under C, public notification and citizen input. You're going to notify the property owners appropriately, but there's a requirement in here that says a thorough record shall be made of the notification process and input from citizens with particular attention to concerns and perspectives of neighboring property owners regarding the proposed reclassification effects on property values, compatibility, traffic, aesthetics, noise, and quality of life. My point is, they're going to come in, as you know, and they're going to give you comments, and they're going to give you these kinds of comments, and you need to keep a good record of that as part of the input to your consideration of those property rezonings.
And this is all, everything you said in the context of it's just an idea. It's just proposal stage. It's just a possible way to achieve growth or achieve a goal in general. And through the notifications, through the invitation for those property owners to participate in the discussions, whether it's just among the commission or with the council, all of that will get documented. To use the term used earlier, if they make it clear that they are not in that, they opt out, that would be recorded. If they're in, they're proponents of what's being prescribed, they would signal that, we would record it. So that rigor would be all a part of, because at some point, we're going to have to take all the thoughts and through the public interaction, we're going to winnow them down to what's doable and agreeable, or not doable, not agreeable, and perhaps that tool comes off the table and we look to other ways to achieve the goals of the town. I'm just being comprehensive here. And I think, yeah, I got that. No, I appreciate that. So the trigger would be when the Planning Commission comes away from agreeable goals and vision. The trigger of the notifications, the interaction with the property owners on the idea of comprehensive rezoning would begin when we're sent away and told to come back with how do you think are wise ways for us to implement those goals. And if comprehensive rezoning is a part of that toolbox, proposed toolbox, we would bring that to the council for their interaction in full view of the affected property owners, in full view of the adjacent property owners, and that would all be up front as a part of that discussion. That discussion would either winnow that down, take it off the table. We would begin that very large conversation. I think you had something to add, Councilman Kelly, or?
I have a question, I think, for Tom.
Okay.
Based on what you're saying, Chairman. So after the kickoff, and the commission has its direction, right? Because you haven't been in an open meeting since then, right? And this may be months, a year after that kickoff, right, where you start talking about specific properties, right? Again, there's been no open meeting where they've started to talk about specific properties, but they come together in an open meeting or workshop, right, to start ideating, right, drafting a plan.
Mhm.
They don't know what properties yet to
Notify.
notify,
Right.
right? So that's not outside the code, right? Because there's no agenda point that has those properties on the agenda.
Right.
Is that the delineation?
Right.
Okay.
But
I just want to get that out there.
The ordinance.
Okay, okay.
I perceive some confusion sort of in that regard, right? Because you don't know what you don't know yet.
Correct.
So if there's no properties on the agenda yet, you're coming together to first talk about them. Obviously, there's bless you.
Apologize.
I think what we're saying is if you know, then you have a duty to notify.
That's right.
When you know, yeah.
So I want to sort of get out there because I'm perceiving some confusion, and I wanted to.
No, I think it's fair. I think that discussion amongst the commission in full view of the public would be that whole idea of possibly using comprehensive rezoning would probably start with that simple question among the 7 of us. Do we think that's a viable way for us to achieve that goal that the council said was fine with them? And then we would start there. We don't have a specific set of residences or properties. We just have the idea of, is that a tool that we want to invoke? And then if we all say, well, let's explore that, now we get down to possibly specific properties. And then that begins the notification, that begins the openness to their input, adjacent property. And so does that sound reasonable?
I think so.
Okay.
Again, you won't know that until you deliberate in public.
I was just thinking of that. It's kind of like we'll know it when we get there, and but you just have to get into it.
Switches the cart, right? So
Yeah.
I think with what Tom just said, when you get to the point where you're putting specific addresses on an agenda, that's the trigger.
Definitely. And again, back to you, Councilman. Any
Just to wrap it up, I mean, just to emphasize that the ordinance lays out the process, the criteria for analysis and then recommendations and decision-making. And that process is to be consistent, whether it's rezonings outside the master plan, rezonings within the master plan, during the comprehensive master plan. I just want to emphasize the point. During the comprehensive master plan process, once you take this vision of where you want the town to go and actually identify specific properties, those properties need to go through this process of analysis, criteria, et cetera, with the town planner, with the proper comprehensive report, et cetera.
Okay.
It should all look the same whether you're within comprehensive master planning or outside master planning. And the notification processes are the same.
Can I add something, kind of sprinkle something in? So if we're going through the process, everyone's notified. We have a public meeting, right? The landowners that are, occupying the homes that may be subject to this, those landowners are essentially renting property to someone else. Or there's another scenario where, there's a few scenarios, like there's a house owned in a trust, or there's a house owned by a business owner, but he rents the property. Those people are still notified of this particular thing we're doing, right? Rezoning. Now, if the property owners show up, most of them, right? And let's say those properties owned in a trust, those properties owned by someone else that simply uses it as rental income, but there's actual renters in it, and they're notified, and they don't show up to make a decision, yes, yay, or nay. Does that kill the entire scenario if we don't have 100% input? What I'm asking is, if there's 2/3 or half or 60% of the landowners are yay for this, and we don't hear from 20% of them, and we all make a decision based on the stakeholders' input, right? We record all of that. It goes into your desk, and you guys are deliberating on this subject, right? And you still haven't heard from everybody. Is it still going to be something that you're like, yeah, I'm going to put my stamp on this. We're going to go ahead and rezone it. What I'm saying is, if there's an air of doubt on the side of the council, if the decision is made from the planning side and we follow the flow chart, which makes perfect sense to me, I have no problem with it. When it gets to your desk and you're like, I haven't heard from everybody, so I'm not voting on it. Or, you know, what's going to be the stumbling block and what's not going to be the stumbling block to you guys making a decision that you're aligned on from this commission's alignment with it?
Can I say one thing? So you said something, we'd be notifying the tenants. Typically, we don't notify the tenants because we don't have their addresses. Or we have their address and we send them letter to the address of the property owner. We don't notify tenants. So if it happens to be a rental property, we wouldn't be notifying the tenant of that potential change.
Okay. I just, you know, if there's no voice for the people that were notified and, you know.
Oh, I understand what you're saying. Like you're saying,
Like,
if the person
I'm
is
with
outside the
Commissioner
state.
Wallace
or
in that
whatever.
everyone needs to know, and they need
Sure.
to know so they know, right? I'm invested in that. But if the majority doesn't or does show and they're for something that we're doing, I don't want to do all the hard work, and I'm sure you don't and all of us don't, to get to the council's desk to say, I don't want to do this, I didn't hear from this person, that person, or the other one.
Now, again,
If they
back
were
to
properly
my point, there's tenants, you know, when we put the sign in the front yard, they're going to realize it, and they would hopefully would call me and find out, you know, why is there a sign in my front yard? Are you the property owner? No. Yeah, well, the owner of your property is looking to rezone their property.
Yeah, the best answer I can give to you, Brian, is that at that point where we think we have a pretty good inventory of public input with the specific properties involved, and we look at that inventory or we survey that feedback and we come up short on having any interaction with 2, 3, 4, 5 X properties, I think that's a discussion that we then have to have with the council as to do we move forward absent their input? Yeah. Do we make a second effort to do something to make sure they know that they're on this potential list of reasons? That's the best answer I can come up with.
And I'm buying that. It's just that, you know, if we hit the backstop on it and we're like, we've done everything, and there's a simple decision to be made by the council based on the evidence and everything, reviewing the staff report, analysis, citizen input, and planning commission recommendations, considering elements of D above, holding public meeting, making findings of fact, render decision, and create recording of proceedings, is that going to say, yeah, we're doing it? Or is it going to say, no, we're not? It's a question of alignment, essentially.
I could just offer a comment.
Is the town's aligned
I'll
with
say,
the idea or not?
I would expect a council member, if they're, in my view, being a good council member, they're going to review the record. They're going to review the documentation. As Chairman Gent said, they're going to look at the record of public comments. They're going to look at the notification record. They're going to look at the number of times those properties were notified. They're going to look at the scope of the comments offered or not from those property owners. I would think the council member is going to look at the comprehensive staff report. They're going to look at the analysis. They're going to look and see if the criteria were, you know, seriously applied or just maybe in a cursory manner applied. They're going to look at the quality of the documentation, the notification, the coordination, the analysis, and the final recommendation. And then if all of that is in order, I would think the council member would make a wise decision.
Make a decision.
And I think that's actually the value of the ordinance, is that it does provide, the council member does have that record, whereas today they don't necessarily have that record. And so there would be a question mark, but in this case, you would know. We reached out to this person this many times.
It would be undeniably truthful.
Right, well, we had the public hearings, and then,
we had all
it's all documented, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. We've wire brushed that pretty good. But again, I know this is down the road, but I think this conversation now, while it's fresh, both on how we did this past one and the new ordinance, I'd rather have that discussion while it's fresh rather than 4 years and now from when we're trying to search our brains, or there's totally different people and they don't have this conversation under their belt. I'm going to close this agenda item and move now to council reports from council liaison. Councilmember Kelly.
Hello. A few notes from the July meeting. The council met on July 13th. First note is the September meeting has been moved to September 14th due to Labor Day. We have a late Labor Day this year, so the 14th is the September council meeting. The town-county agreement with Carroll County was approved at the last meeting. The council briefly discussed the letters of that the town received from the state and Carroll County regarding the Warfield property annexation. We just discussed 2026-2. That was voted into law. A hearing was set for August 3rd, this coming Monday at 7:15 before the council meeting for ordinance 2026-22 related to regulating food trucks. Lastly, as we all know, the mayor informed us that he will be resigning effective August 31st. And lastly, our next meeting will be this Monday, August 3rd.
Any questions for council liaison on that report? Hearing none. The administrator report, John, we have a copy of your report. Any highlights? Any questions then to John on that report? John, I kind of jumped past it. Any highlights, comments you want to make?
Nope, steady as it goes.
Okay. I see that we have new business. I think we talked about that bullet already, haven't we?
Yeah, so that was Roxanne took my thunder on that, but please let me know if anybody wants to go or register for that MPCA conference, and what days, one day or all the days, so just let me know, please, so I can make arrangements sooner than later. I'm sure that if you're wanting to stay there, the hotel accommodations at the parcel or property might be limited. So if you're wanting to stay on the property, please let me know.
And again, just to make sure we're all on the same page, what are the dates that we should?
So it's the October 18th, starting at 10 a.m., Sunday the 18th, and that goes until Tuesday the 20th until 5 p.m.
10 a.m., 20th.
And so it's the 18th, 19th, and 20th.
20th, right.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Tuesday
And
the 20th.
Location is Turf Valley Resort.
Valley Resort.
And
again, I did look on the MPCA website to prep for this meeting, and I didn't see anything that was on there for registration for it. I think what's going to end up happening is we might have to register on the APA conference website to secure the room and the meeting. So we'll see. I'll talk to Roxanne. I'll talk to her next, tomorrow or something. See, they said they were going to be updating the MPCA website, but again, I just want to know as soon as people can give me information if they're going or not.
yeah, so all we need to do on this particular action is just signal back to you via email, text, or some manner that we are for all 3 days, or I'm sorry, 18 through 20, or some portion. Exactly.
Right. Registration, and if you need hotel accommodation.
Okay, do you want us, we don't do the registration yet, do we?
Well, I would register now. Yeah, we want to register now.
Okay.
So as soon as we can.
All right.
And I wasn't sure if, Steve, did you do the planning commission training course already?
If that's the one that
Did it online.
was sent to me when I first was put on.
Okay.
Yes. I have a
Excellent.
certificate from the state. I was going to ask you if that was the same thing or not.
No, it's different training, but sometimes they offer that as part of the training there, but I wouldn't think it'd be in that conference. But it was probably online, or I think they're actually scheduled to have another conference, a teleconference for that as well, so.
Okay. One last call for any comments from council liaison, attorney, commissioners, topics other than the agenda or discussions. Thanks so much for this evening. Our next planning commission meeting date is set for August 31st, here again at 7 p.m. And it is, let's say, 9:10. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you very much.